So, you've heard me say this, and I told you there was a slide on this very point. Pages in Magento. So when you go to a particular URL and you get that page really isn't the thing. The block is the thing in Magento, and that page is just a collection of blocks. You happen to have that one root block that sort of encapsulates everything, but really, that's just a block, just like any other block in the system. So, here's an example of the template file location. This, of course, doesn't exist, base default template view. But you would expect actually to find some sort of folder to kind of organize these templates, and then in there you would find view. So maybe base default template catalog product view. In fact, I believe that is where this code comes from. So here, what do we have? Well, we have some typical HTML and some very simple logic. Okay, and you see the convention in these template files is to use colons. That's the convention. And then so corresponding with this colon, you have to use endif. It actually does, I do find it to be a little bit more readable than a bunch of curly braces. So this, as I mentioned, and as I pointed out in the fetch view method, and that was in Mage core block templates. So Mage core block template is generally where we're getting all of our block classes. That's where they extend from. If they need templates, then they definitely extend from Mage core block template. These template files, these PHTML files, are literally in that fetch view method, which is called in the course of rendering the output. These files are included in the block class. So that's why we have this. And this, being the block class instance, means that we can use all these methods. Some of the core methods that we get, of course, are getChildHTML, which we need everywhere. And here we're actually getting instantiating a helper wish list. So this would actually correspond to Mage wishlist helper data. So we could also have /data in here, just for helpers. And actually, we're trying to find out some, this is some basically helper method. Okay, we'll check the wishlist helper. Do we have wishlist enabled? Okay, then show this. If not, we don't show this. So the wish list does have a configuration setting, and that's what the helper's for. Just uses that system configuration setting. All right, and obviously here's a product object. Down here we're calling getChildHTML. So somewhere in the system, the block that has this template set for it, there's been a child set for it called add_to. And that's going to have probably a block class and a template as well. And calling this getChildHTML, this child getHTML was called on this, and so subsequently the call goes down, all the way down, down, down. We've seen this before, so this is actually a slide dedicated to the point I just made, which is that first we'll call getChildHTML, get this block, and then the getChildHTML calls inside of this block are also called recursively. Okay. The nice thing to know is that that just happens. So, block structure in terms of your classes. All right. So at the base there's Mage core block abstract, and of course you know where to find that. That would be appcode core, Mage core block abstract.php, and this has some. Fundamental methods. Obviously, getChild. This would return the block instance of a child block. getChildHTML. This would return. This obviously would get the rendered output of some child block, and then the toHTML method. And this is a final method here, so it's not overridden anywhere. And what we do have here in Mage core block template, which extends from Mage core block abstract. By the way, I'm telling you a lot of stuff that is background information. When you are making your own block classes and templates, it's certainly beneficial to have an understanding of this. And there are a few key points which I will continue to make that you should know. But Absolutely memorizing everything I'm saying about this slide right now is not essential to making your block class. So just know that at the core we have this Mage Core Block Abstract class, and then Mage Core Block Template extends from that. And generally, you're almost always going to almost always have in your module a block class, and you'll want a template file. And if you want a template file, the rule of thumb is you'll extend from Mage Core Block Mage Core Block Template. And Mage Core Block Template has these other methods here: set template, get template file, and also this protected method, toHTML. So what happens, toHTML is called in the course of rendering, and then there are also some other methods that are called before toHTML and after toHTML. But toHTML is called, and this actually triggers an entire call stack, which eventually calls render view and fetch view, and we get our template included, etc. But basically, the goal of all of this is, our custom block would extend from this, and depending on how we use that, we'll get our output rendered. And we'll look at how that works right now. So, first step, we have to tell the system, just like we were doing with our models, we have to tell the system about where to find our blocks. So just like we had with models, so in config global, so inside the global node, where we had models before, now we have blocks. And then we simply have our unique node here. In this case, catalog. In the case of our custom block, custom. And then, just like with models, we specify a class node, and then this is the file system path to our block classes. So, recently added in this note, so you can see that MySpace custom block, this maps to MySpace/custom/block. So from now on, once I do this, if I say, block, if I specify a block type of custom/anything, the system can map custom to this place in the file system. Down here, if I, for example, have my own product view, Mage app get layout, create block, custom, product view, custom, the configuration looks here, gets this, MySpace/custom/block/product/view.php, and then that's the class name that it would find. All right? I hope that is crystal clear. So incidentally, so here we're actually creating a block instance and assigning it to this variable using the Mage app to get the layout object and creating the block this way. But we would also see the same string here in layout XML. Okay? So that's the connection there. What we specify for the block type in layout XML, that string gets passed to create block. Okay, so create a new page, block, and template for the page. All right. Well, we've already created and registered a controller. So let's work with our example here. So I'll go ahead and I'll bring up our config XML just so we can review the controllers. Okay. So, obviously our module is under app code local. And then, I don't remember if I was using, yeah. So I have my configuration, which should look like this. Oh, in fact, you see, yesterday we went ahead and registered our class group in the configuration. So there's that path again, config global blocks. And then I use my namespace with my module name and specified the class prefix in there. All right, so now if I say create block day 2 / something, that's where it's going to map up. And then for my controllers down here, under config, I have my front end node with routers, and then again I chose to use my namespace and module name. I'm in the front end, so I'm using the standard router, and then my args that I pass in are simply the path, so day 2, and then my front name, which is heyo. Okay, so for the purpose of being able to do this exercise, it's imperative that you have a working controller. If you don't have a working controller, please let me know, and we'll come and get it working. So what our lesson is, so we're going to create a new page. What does that mean? That means a new route. That's all that means. So what does that mean in terms of a controller file? Well, quite simply, it means that, actually, you know what? I'm going to create a whole new controller file. Because I can, because I've configured, if you recall, once I set up my front name, I've configured the system so that it can find my controllers. So I'm going to do, because we're in the rendering section, I'm going to create a render controller. So that'll be a new PHP file here, and just by convention, it's going to be render controller.php. All right? So let me peg this open. So under my module, in my little c controllers folder, right next to my index controller, I have this render controller. So how would I get to this controller? It'd be my front name, right, for my configuration. So my configuration over here, so I would need to go to heyo. Actually, I'm going to change this from heyo. That was silly. I will use I'll just say custom, just for the fun of it. Okay, so now my front name is custom, so I would need to go to my site address /custom, right? And from that point, all that matters is where these files are located. So for render controller, I would just need to go to render, right? Yeah, so front name gets me all the way up here to this controllers folder through my module. And then from there, this render controller, it just simply is converted to, is matched against render. So in here, and again, class name is going to be my module path, yep, day 2, and then render controller. All right? And it has to extend from Mage Core controller variant front. And you could, of course, I hear a lot of you typing. You could just
front action.
Variant.
Front
Come on, little girl.
Just to be controller front action.
There we go. Mage Core controller variant front. Variant action. No, yes, variant action. Right? Mage Core controller front action. There we go. That's better. Wait a minute. Man, I can't keep these classes straight. All right. So, our class, day 2 render controller extends Mage Core controller front action. That just simply gives us a lot of the internals that we need for our controller file to work in the front end. And then, so we know my front name is custom. My controller name is render, so it'll be site.com custom render, and then any action that I want to call in here. So I could say this is a block action. We'll say public function block action. Okay. Now, first step, set the response body hello world. Okay, well, so this get response set body and I'm just going to deviate hello Magento. So I'll let you guys take a second, make sure that works for you. Let's see. App code local day 2 controllers, render controller. So here we've just simply assigned a string to the response body. You know, this would be really not practical at all as an actual piece of a module, but this is all that Magento does. It does it in a different way using the layout, but effectively we're just getting a string of HTML content and attaching it to the response object. So our next step is to register our blocks, which we've already done in our configuration file, create a block class, which we have not done, and in there we're going to override its toHTML method. Okay? So let's make a new action. I'm just going to copy this one, and I'm going to say public function, we'll do override action. All right? So again, highly encourage a copy and paste of the previous function. All right. So, what's our business need now? Well, we need a block class to use. So we probably have some data that we want to represent in the system. This example here isn't probably the most practical because this is only the one instance where we're going to use this. Generally, you're going to create blocks if you're going to want to use them with the layout. So, but this is really just to start to get your hands on the blocks. So, what's our next step if we have to create? Well, first thing, of course, we'll verify. Okay, config global blocks. Okay, so I've registered my blocks. So what's my next step based on what you see here?
Create a temporary. Create a block.
Something before that.
Make the directory block?
Yes, make the directory for block. So again, if I tell Magento to create a block and I specify day 2, this is where Magento is going to go looking in day 2 block. So I don't have a block folder yet.
Oh, okay.
So I'll need to do that here. Okay, and great. Now I have the path that I need. Day 2 block, day 2 block. And now I can just start making blocks to my heart's content. So I'll make just a nice little sample block. So I'll just have a new PHP file, and I'm going to call it sample.php. Not sample.ph. Sample.php. There we go. All right. Get rid of all of that NetBeans stuff. So, app code local day 2 block sample.php. And based on where this block is, I know what that class name is going to be, don't I?
Day 2 block sample.
Exactly. Day 2 block sample. Day 2 block sample. Okay? And that, well, we're going to be overriding the toHTML method. So the protected toHTML method. And that is from MageCore block template. So we'll need to extend from MageCore block template. Okay, these steps that we've just done, you know, our configuration, that's the first step. Register our block class groups. And then we're free to make our block class. So this is what you would do anytime you need to make blocks for your module. Register your blocks class group, and then you start making these files. And these blocks will extend from MageCore block template. So now we can override this toHTML method, which is called, and it's a protected function toHTML. And we just need to return a string. So, hello, Magento from all right. Now I'm going to split the screen here. So what does this look like back in our controller file? Well, let's get this output here. So let's see, how do I want to get this output? Yeah, I'll probably need to create the blocks. So let's say block HTML equals, and in a controller I can just simply call this get layout. This will get me the single instance of the layout object. And
when we are in this file, what does this point to? This object is for
this is day 2 render controller class.
okay, and this refers to that class. Okay.
Yep. And this class, and the reason we have this, you know, this get layout method is because of, you know, the chain of classes from which we're extending. So in this case, we're extending from MageCore controller front action, which itself extends from MageCore controller variant action, which I believe, yeah, that's the abstract class. Okay? So that's just a whole chain of functionality. And in the admin, we would actually be extending from a different action.
So,
All right.
okay, get layout, right?
Yep, so get layout, and then we need to create block. Okay? And, of course, we know our class group. Day 2. And then slash, and what was our block? It was the sample block. So we just put sample here. And then I can simply just, oh, and then I need to call, because I'm not rendering yet, I need to call toHTML. But not the protected toHTML, the public toHTML. And our block gets the public toHTML from the MageCore block abstract class. So this, calling this toHTML here, this will actually return a string. And then I need only pass that string in here, block HTML. All right, so override action. So I can just go to my browser and change block to override. And we should see, hello Magento, and there's my file location. I could also say, let's see, I'll do this instead. Actually, this will be prettier. That's what I meant to do. From day 2 block sample, there we go. So I changed that magic method from file to class. And then I could also even change it to method and get my class and my method. Right? So in the course of rendering, that toHTML method is called, which in turn calls the protected toHTML, various other methods. It's a whole stack, but that's all. That's what you need to know in the scope of this course. Create a core template block and a template in the custom theme, and in the controller add output to response body. I'll just put that slide up. I think you should have the same slide now. So create a core template block, and here, this core template, you can see that's, okay, we're actually going to create a literal Mage core block template. We're going to instantiate that block, and we're going to have a template in our custom theme. And then inside our controller, we're going to get that output somehow and add it to the response body. So what does that look like? Well, that looks like we probably should make yet another function, another action. So public function. We will make this, we'll call it template action. Okay. And, excuse me, may I highly encourage you to do something very similar to what we just did up here. So I would copy this, the override action, paste it in here. Save yourself some effort. And then we're going to create a core template block. So that's literally core/template. Okay, but we have to do one more step. We have to assign a template to that. It's very easy.
Template to the block?
Yep. So we assign a template to the block object.
Because we're not loading layouts, so it's not going to read out.
Exactly, exactly. We will look at how we could get a block and a template through the layout. We'll look at that soon enough, but for right now we'll set template here and we'll specify something. So, well, we've got our, I have a day 2 module, so I'm just going to use day_2. I'm just going to use my my class group name that I've been using. That's just my convention for my module. And I'm going to specify just a random template file. So random.phtml.
But that day 2 is just the name of a directory in the template folder, has nothing.
Bingo! Bingo, bingo, bingo. I like it. So what Savon was just pointing out was that what I've specified here, I know it's, and it can be a little ambiguous because, you know, you see this slash notation up here and the slash notation down here. Well, totally different. This slash is used to split this string and determine our class group and our and the class under that class group. So in this case, Mage core block template. And then in here, this is just a file system path relative to template folder. Again, we don't specify themes because if we were to if we could specify themes, well then we'd be locking our theme in here. So day 2 random, and this is obviously this is a custom module, something we distribute. So the exercise actually says put that in your custom theme, and I say no. We're going to practice because this is I'd say we would want this to work no matter what the theme the user chose. We'll put this in base default. Okay, so this here, this set template call, applies to blocks that extend from MageCore block template, which is why most module blocks will always extend from that instead of the abstract block class.
Mhm.
So set template, and then it's just a path relative to template, and then something dot PHTML. Okay. And then so that was a template action, so I just need to go to my front name custom, my controller name render, and template.
Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. So, based on my configuration, I could use custom package and custom. I could use custom package default, or I can use base default. Again, I'm going to say that this is something we're distributing somehow, so it's okay for us to put this under app design, front end, base, default, template. And then, how do we know where to put it? Well, this is the path. So basically, at the template folder is where we start considering the path. So we'll need a day 2 folder and a random.phtml template file. So in here, make a new folder, day 2. And then I'll make a new PHP file, and I'll call it random.phtml. What's that? Yeah, I'll put it up here, actually, up top. And again, I could put this file in my theme, but if this were something I were distributing, I don't know what other people's theme settings are going to be, so I would put it in base default, because no matter what they set for their package or theme, if it's not found there, the system will look for it in base default. So the path is, let's see. Actually, I'm not going to have any. Let's see. App design front end. App design front end. Base default day 2 for me. And random.phtml. And then I can simply say,
You missed template there on the path.
did I? Oh, thank you. Yes, I did. I missed template there. Well, that's tragedy here. Okay, and then I'm simply going to, let me see, I'll do a little PHP here. And I will, let's see, go get class this. All right, so now that we've done this, let's see if it works. Yeah. Does everyone else have output? Yeah. Okay. So, again, why would we do this? Why indeed? Well, because this is effectively what we do with layout XML. We via some layout XML file, we specify a block type and we can assign a template to it. That's what's happening internally. So let's walk through this. So app code core, Mage. Let me see, app code core, Mage, and core, block. So we have a couple of players here. We have abstract class and we have our template class. So in our abstract class, we have this final 2HTML method. So we could never override this because it's declared final here. So Magento gives us this for if we ever want to override the 2HTML method, we have this protected one that is established elsewhere. So 2HTML, okay, there's a lot of translation stuff in here. We call a before 2HTML method, which is interesting. So we have these sort of magical methods that we can fire. So this would actually happen before we go to 2HTML. Here's a cache call, and here you see where we actually call the protected 2HTML method. And then there's also this after 2HTML method. So these are actually utility functions where we can do things. And if you look at the definition for these, I just return that here. Let's see, go back to this function. Okay, so we're calling 2HTML, the public method. That calls this internally, which in here, 2HTML, the protected method, just returns an empty string. So that's why we have over here this protected 2HTML. What does this do? This fetches the template if we've set it, and if we haven't set a template for our block, well, we just return an empty string. There's no if there's no template, then there's no output. For these particular blocks, for Mage core block template and blocks that extend from it. So a little bit of information to know. You have to have that template set, or you override 2HTML to get output. Then what is called here? So we're just getting a string here, HTML, through render view. So what does render view look like? All right. Well, okay. We set script path, figure out where our design is. Okay. Well, then we call render view calls fetch view, and we saw fetch view earlier. We pass in the file name, so that's passing in our template. That string that we just specified and said template, that gets passed in here. And here we have, we've got variant profiler. Let's see, direct output. Let's see. Here's where we start output buffering. Okay. And there's our template path hints. So this is the HTML that gets wrapped around those. I rather wish they'd used an observer because they could have, but. All right, and then here is the check that we were looking at earlier for the real path. So this is that symlink breakage that was introduced in 1.4.2. All right. So, and if we don't have, look what happens. If we don't have a template file, look at that. There's a Mage log call. That tells me, remember earlier, if you remember earlier, I actually called an action when I didn't have my template file existing. So let's see here. Mage log. Oh, look, there's my log error message.
Mm-hmm.
So if, when we saw that blank screen earlier,
Mm-hmm.
if I were developing blocks and templates and I wasn't getting anything, check your log. Okay, any questions? So in our controller, we were, let's see, we had day 2 render controller. All right. So we're calling this toHTML method. Well, where does that toHTML method come from? Well, it comes from the abstract class, right? So toHTML calls this underscore toHTML method. Okay, so of course this would be in the scope of our block. So our block extends from core template. So let's look at that. Let's see. toHTML. All right. Well, calls render view. Render view. This sets script path. Okay, so that sets some sort of internal thing. And then we say fetch view. This get template file. And then that's what that was the piece I had failed to notice. So here we get our design area, and then we get the design object. So this design object here, let's see, get template file name. This comes from Mage. This comes from Mage core model design package. So if we were instantiating that, it would be core/design_package. And get template file name starts here, calls this get file name. Okay, so this get file name calls the fallback function and takes whatever params it's been given here. But yeah, so really all we have is an array of the different fallback parameters.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how it works, okay? And then it returns the rendered file name. So that's how that fallback works. I mean, you're able to, you can dig through the code just the same way yourselves. It's the beauty of open source. So just and it can be enough though just to know that will always work. So you would always, that's why you always specify a template relative to template folder. In fact, that's what it says specifically in the code. Okay, so back to the lesson. Block class group declaration. Well, we have this. We've looked at this. So this would be where? This would be in a module configuration file, correct? Those chicken sandwiches are good. All right. I got some in me too. Config, global, blocks, catalog. And in our module, we could say config, global, blocks, custom. And actually here, I love this example. I don't know why you would ever do this, but you can. Say maybe down the road, you're going to have your blocks extend from the catalog blocks, but not yet. You could do this. All this does is if I said create block custom, well, the system would go and it would look for custom here under config global blocks, look for this class node and see, okay, well, the blocks for this module, I find them in Mage catalog block. That would work. So custom product view in this case would simply bring in Mage catalog block product view. Again, not sure why you would ever do that, but that's sort of the point of the slide, is to show once again that this is just a file path. All right. So, stages of a block lifecycle. Declared in the layout XML, or maybe it's just, as we've been doing, been declared in the code. So we just get the layout object and call create block directly. That's what we've done so far. So the block instance, when it's created, basically as part of the constructor for that block, this prepare layout method is called. It's important. Prepare layout is actually, if we have some kind of model data that we need, that's where we would put the logic and the calls to the models to actually prepare all of the information that we need. Okay? So prepare layout is a very important method. It's just a setup function, essentially. Render layout method is called. So in a controller, we might have this load layout. If you get our XML, set up our blocks. Those blocks would be instantiated. All their prepare layout methods would be called. And we call render layout. Render layout in calls basically we'll eventually call this toHTML method, and we'll start getting all of our block output. And as I kind of pointed out when we were taking the tour day core blocks, we have these utility methods before toHTML and after toHTML that are wrapped around that sort of bookend the toHTML function. So you could use this for any number of things. You know, again, you could put some logging or debugging info in here, mage log, or you could, any kind of utility that you want to do. All right, so that's basically what that's the chrysalis into pupa, the butterfly thing right here. That's what's going on with blocks. So, all right. In the block, we set layout. Okay, what's going on in here? Well, quite simply, this is wrapped around the prepare layout method. We have a couple of events that are fired. This core block abstract prepare layout before. So again, these would be, you could use observers to do a very similar thing as we were doing with our controllers earlier. Because what gets passed in is the actual block object. And there are other events around block rendering, and I believe we'll be looking at that as well. So just know that just like in other areas, models, controllers, there are gobs of events being dispatched. Okay. Oh, and by the way, yes, we're back into some sort of background information before we get back to the practical. So events fired in the block, again, core block abstract. So in the toHTML, we actually have the toHTML before and the HTML call, and then toHTML after. All right, so again, more events that we can observe and do things with. And we could always observe this event and then log some specific data. If I had an observer and I was logging data, I would probably do something to figure out what class it was and just say, okay, the class began rendering here and ended rendering here, for these two events. All right. So types of blocks. I think you guys now have a pretty good explanation of these different block types in here in your book. Generally, the one that you'll almost always be using is Mage Core Block Template. At least as far as what your custom blocks will extend, will be this one. A couple more that I should talk about are Mage Core Block Text List. This block, you'll see, actually, this block extends from Mage Core Block Text, and that extends directly from Mage Core Block Abstract. So what that should tell you is that Mage Core Block Text List and Mage Core Block Text don't use templates. Mage Core Block Text List is actually very important. That is the block class. If you look in a page.xml, so app design, front end, I can use my custom package. Let's see, layout, page.xml. So let me find a core text list. Okay, there's my switcher. I need to look that one up. But then, let's see, core text list. We have our content area. So we have left, right, and content. Now in the Magento template, that looks like, so you have your big you have your big root template, okay? And those are your 1 column, 2 column left, 2 column right, 3 column, okay? And you have just some header stuff up here, and you have a wrapper. And then inside here, you have, and this, the position of these blocks are based on the root template. So you have left, right, and content. Now, it would be a real pain if you wanted to, if you want to have just all these blocks. So you'll notice if you start using Magento and just start playing around as just a customer who's coming to a website. You add something to your cart, maybe you get, this little cart widget might show up here, or if you've viewed some products, a little recently viewed products block shows up here. If we had to define all the possible views for that, basically have a template that would say, explicitly, get child HTML, recently viewed products, get child HTML, cart widget, get child HTML, newsletter sign up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That'd be pretty cumbersome. So, what the original developers of Magento did was they made this core text list block, and what it does is it takes when its 2HTML method is called, it simply has all of its children, all of its child blocks are rendered, basically. So there's no template for this. It just simply renders all its child blocks. So that's why we're able, in the code, to assign some block to the right or left or content, and it's rendered without us necessarily having to declare it anywhere. Also, with left and right blocks, or I'm sorry, with text list blocks, we get some positioning ability. Those are the blocks. So some of you familiar with Layout XML have seen like before and after as parameters that you can specify in Layout XML. Those are for core text list blocks only. So internally, all it is just an array. And there's 2 arrays inside of core text list. There's the sorted children and unsorted children. And we'll be playing with some of this in a moment. Okay. Also, I should talk about core block text is just perfect actually for demonstrations. It just simply you would create this block and then call set text, and it will just return whatever text was set on it. Core block flush will actually just immediately, it doesn't use the output buffering, it will immediately start rendering. Also not used in the core. You could use this, for example, for an AJAX response would be one. All right. So let's see. Core block messages. So if you wanted to set up some kind of messaging, flash messaging system, you would actually want to extend from Mage core block messages, and probably your own session namespace, because there are some helper functions in here that are used when we want to flash messages at customers. Yeah. But again, majority of the time, you're dealing with Mage core block template. And we'll be looking at Mage page block template links shortly. All right. How to disable output of a module? Well, you simply specify this configuration node, config default advanced, modules disable output, and then specify like Mage CMS 1. That'll disable that. Okay.
Question?
Yes?
That looks like it's mapping to the backend system config.
Exactly, which is why you wouldn't want to do that, but you could do that here. You would probably want to do it here. Very good, very good. So, you could do it here, and as we've already explained, this does not disable the module, just the output. All right, so a bit of a review. Blocks are instantiated through the layout object. This happens either in the controller by getting the layout object, or in a template by getting the layout object, or through layout XML. Either way, that block will be created against the layout object. Blocks extend Mage Core Block Abstract, which any block that extends Mage Core Block Template would do because Mage Core Block Template extends Mage Core Block Abstract. All right. And model and collection loads, prepare layout. That's your setup function. So in your block class, you would define prepare layout, and in prepare layout, do any kind of setup stuff that you need to do. And the underscore to HTML method returns a block output through the public method. Okay, so that's just a little review of what we. Oh, CMS block HTML. All right, so here's a special function for CMS blocks. This is basically just to say that, to show you that in your block class you can have different methods that do something that you need. So in this case, for the CMS system, we have to somehow get that data. So that's actually an interesting way. We can look at the configuration for that here. I will have to log in again. I believe. No, that's right. I believe that's under display settings. So display mode, static block only or static block in products. And then I can choose from some static block that I've configured under CMS static blocks. Okay? So that can actually be a handy way if your client says, oh, I've got this just miscellaneous HTML I want to update on category page, above my product listing. Well, you could give them a static block to use, set the correct configuration here, and then we'd use. What this slide is intending to show you is that any kind of task like that you would program in to your block. And then in the template, there's some corresponding logic that maps up with what kind of display mode we have set for the category. So, and that template looks like I think, yeah, here is this, yeah, these maybe not gracefully named is content mode, get CMS block HTML. So here is that method actually being called here, so that's how we get that content. And what we do here is we actually get some data member that was set, get our layout object, create this CMS block, set the block ID for whatever the setting was, etc. Okay, this just to serve as an example of any kind of display task that you have, you'd put it in a block. Okay. If we want to instantiate a block directly in the controller, as we've been doing, again, this is in the admin, we just get layout, create block, and then call to HTML and set it on the response object's body. Only thing we did differently in our example was to just take this create block call, this to HTML, and assign it to a variable, and then put the variable in here for set body. Just it's a little cleaner. Okay, so definitive list here. All right. From a controller, how do we get the template? Well, get layout, get block, get template. From anywhere, just get the layout object through Mage app, get some block, get the template, and we can set the block, set the template inside the block. We just set the template on itself. Again, use Mage Core Model app to get the layout object, get the block that was created somewhere, and set the template. I'm not sure the application of this slide actually. Generally, you're going to. It's not often that you'll need to get the template, the block itself. The more common task is to set the template, and you can do this. And some core block templates do this. The price block, if you'll notice, actually has internally. It is explicitly set to catalog product price.phtml. And so that can actually be a bit of a gotcha if you go to try and find where a template is set for a particular block and you don't see it declared anywhere in the XML. Chances are you have to look at that block class and get the template that was defined for it. Passing parameters to the block. Okay. Still haven't really told you guys about variant object yet. Suffice it to say that all these objects in Magento, they extend from variant object, which means you can do things like this. So blocks, controllers, everything. You just call object set some value, and I'll pass in a string here, and then I'm free to call object. Actually, whether I do this or not, I'm free to call object get some value. These are the infamous getters and setters in Magento. This will return string, if I've called this before. So basically what happens is variant object, this is just a utility that Magento baked in. It's kind of cool. It's kind of tough to debug. It's not clean programming, and from what I've read, Magento 2 will no longer implement this. Yep. So it's going away.
So you write your own getters and setters?
Exactly. So if you can't just have these magic things, you actually have to have well-defined interfaces. That is what it is. So here, when we call set param, that would actually set, internally, that would set a key in an array. Would also do some other changes, but internally that would set a key in an array to lowercase p param equals whatever we pass in the function call. And then for the second one, another param, that key would look like this. Another param. Okay? So that's what we'll talk about for right now. We'll revisit variant object soon enough. So that's why we're actually able to get a block from the layout object and then just arbitrarily call these, and then we can retrieve that data later, either in a template or somewhere else. Okay? So now, jumping away for a second, overriding a block, similar to how we override models. So we have global blocks, so config global blocks, and then we specify the class group name. We want to put our information into this rewrite node here. So rewrite, and then, so this would be checkout / one page link. If that were the block that were being created, this is what we would be passing in, and we just pass in a full path to our class. We really pass in our class name. Okay? Oh boy. Basic operations of blocks. Set a child block to another block. So you might have the parent block, and then you would call set child. Pass in the name or the alias, but the name. Insert This works for text list blocks. Okay, we'll be dealing with that soon. GetChild will actually get the instance of that block class. So from a parent block, a child, and then of course GetChild HTML. This is the one you'll be using all the time in your template files. And then there's GetChild HTML. Okay, quick exercise. In the controller, register a parameter in the Mage registry. Create a new block class. Okay. So the Mage registry. Registries are are not uncommon pattern. Basically, it's a controlled, guarded. You could think of it as a kind of globals array in the application. So that looks like Mage register. If I want to set some bar to some val, I would just call Mage register some bar some val, and that way, and then I can call Mage registry some var, and I would get the string some val. So we'll walk through this together. Create a new block class which returns the value. So, all right. So what do? We need to create a new block class. What does that involve? Do we have to do anything? And we're working with our module. Do we have to do anything in the configuration? No. Does everyone understand why? It's because once we have our blocks declared, once we have our class group and class prefix declared, as we do here, so once I've done this, like I said earlier, I can create blocks to my heart's content. Okay? Because all Magento configuration needs to know is just how to get that first part of my blocks. Basically, how to get to my block files. And from there, it's just up to me to make them as I see fit. Okay, so first step, in the controller, register a parameter in the Mage registry. What does that look like? So let's make no, we can continue to work in the render controller. That's okay. But we'll make a new action here. And yeah, I'm actually going to copy this method here. Okay. I'm going to change that template action to, we'll call it registry action. Now, first I have to register something. So, by the way, this registry, of course, Mage register. This registry works in a request scope. So once we are done with execution, that value is gone. It's not persistent. Let's see, register, so I will register some var, and I will set that to some value. Okay? Now, I need to create a new block class which returns that value from the registry. And then I also need to create a template to output and format the values. So that tells me that I probably need a core template block of some sort. So I'm going to use, let's see, day 2. That's my class group, which comes from my configuration. And then I will just make a registry block. So registry.phtml. Oh, I'm doing this in the wrong place. I'm going to call this registry, and here I'll call this registry.phtml. So for create block, we just use our factory method syntax, and for set template, we use a file path. Okay. In principle, this is what Magento is doing everywhere. You have templates for formatting formatting data, formatting information. That information, you can create these methods to gather that information, set that information up however you want, do logical tests, do your complex work inside your block class, and keep your templates very simple. So, for example, say I always want to return that. I could say, well, let me see, I think I could probably put a ternary here. So I could return, either I can do a test here for var and say, okay, well, if I've got it, return it. If not, maybe some default information. So in this case here, I should get some value. If I were to change this to something else, I just want to show you the different parts and pieces. So whatever we have to do, a lot of times the need to make a custom block may involve different modules. We need to kind of put together different pieces of information. For example, customer addresses and quote objects and or category collections. We may need these custom blocks to present whatever information, whatever we need to do as far as presentation goes. You just handle all of the model access, instantiation in your block, your complex logic in the block, and then present the information through your template. So, part 2 of this example, and let's see, let me bring up the code editor, close this. So, let's see, list action. Actually, I'll do block, or I'll do list block action. And I'll even camel case this just for fun. So, I need to create a text list block instance. Well, that's pretty easy. I'll do TLB equals this, get layout, create block, core text list, not text. There we go. All right. Now I need a couple of other blocks. So I could say, let's see, block A. Again. This get layout. Create block. And I could even, let's see, so the block that I'm going to create is that core text block, just because it's such a great example block. And then for core text block, I need to, if I want it to do anything, I have to use this set text function. So I can copy this whole little snippet of code over. And I'll make this block B. By the way, I love walking you guys through this kind of example. This is not really something you're going to do very often. We can avoid doing this by using layout XML. Now, all right. Still, it's very important and useful to understand how text list blocks work, and that is the purpose why we're doing this. Get response, set body. Oh, actually, I'll have to do something else here. For these 2 second blocks here, we have, we're calling this set text method. You know, why? Because we have to if we want a core text block to do anything. Then we call this insert method on that first block that we create, and we just simply pass in the objects, these 2 block objects. That makes them children of that text list block. And then down here we just simply call to HTML on the text list block, and it does exactly what it's supposed to. Again, that text list block, that's your left, right, and content areas. Left, right, and content areas in your typical Magento theme. So that's what text list blocks do. They just take their children and render them for you. It's a nice little convenience container, basically. All right, so I will verify that it's working. Go list block. Rather than do this here, so I'll comment this out, but rather than do this, I'm going to call this load layout, and get block content. Let's see, this load layout, how would that look? Get block content. And so load layout, so I'm loading all my layout XML, and I've got all, remember I think it was yesterday, I called load layout and render layout and just got that basically that shell of the Magento page. So that's coming from all those default instructions. I haven't set up any layout XML for this route yet. So, but I know from that I'm going to have this content block, okay? So from that, let me see, what can I do? Let me see, load layout, get block, content, and I can insert TLB. And because content is a text list block, it'll render that, which in turn will render its children. I hope. Let's see if this works.
load layout. You have to go.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, so this load layout, let me see. Let's see this. Get layout. Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of that, that's probably an example of that wonkiness with all these layout columns. Oh, that worked great. Oh, I then have to call render layout, don't I? Hey, that worked. Cool. Yeah. So we loaded the layout. That got all of our blocks that were declared in default scope. Or I'm sorry, in the default layout update handle. Okay. And then once we load that and those blocks can be instantiated, then we said, well, okay, layout object, get us that content block. All right. So that goes through and it finds the content block. That was declared in page XML, yeah. And then we just added our blocks in there. Sweet. Party. So there's your bonus. Overriding a block class. So using your current custom modules config file, override the catalog product view block. Make a change and verify that it worked. All right, so back to my, so if I need to, all right. Any questions? I know that was a very involved lesson, but again, we actually just looked at everything that Magento does with the layout XML. You know, we basically recreated its efforts when you call load layout, render layout ourselves. That's pretty cool. Now, say we have a need to override some other block class. So in this case, we're being asked to override the catalog product view block. Well, why would we do that? Well, maybe we need to add some kind of functionality that we don't have normally.
Override the block and config XML.
Yeah, so we're going to just do a rewrite. So for blocks here, well, we know we're going to be dealing with catalog. And then we need to add in this rewrite instruction.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep, and then product underscore view. So the factory method for this, and we would be able to deduce this from, deduce this from the either the layout XML, or we could use the template path hints and turn on the block names, and then we would see the catalog product view block is mage catalog product view. And from that, we would infer catalog / product view. And then in here, we have to specify the full class name. So we might say, for me, day 2, block, and I'll say catalog product view. I could call it anything that I want, so long as this class is defined somewhere. So based on this name, well, I've got day 2 block. Now I need catalog product folders. So, and of course, always capitalized. So, catalog product. And in here, a new PHP file, view.php. Okay? Okay. And then it's going to be, let's see, I can actually just literally copy this from here And I'm overriding this block class, so I'm probably going to want to extend from the original one. Range catalog block product. View. There we go. So, how could I check that this is working? So again, I mean, I could, say, probably not the best organization of it, but say, I'm just going to have a module that knows about products and customers. So, I mean, let's see. Or say somewhere I'm saving information about how many people are viewing this product right now. I could gather that information and put that in a function here. Really, just any kind of custom functionality that I would want to use, want to represent in my template, I would add that here. So let's see. I could. Let's see, but in our case, let's see, I'm going to do a protected function. And I'm just going to override to HTML just to prove that it worked here. Yeah. Locate the block which renders breadcrumbs and add hard-coded breadcrumb at the beginning. So the steps: enable template path hints, find the block, override it using the config, an overridden block, change the appropriate method, clear cache, and verify that the change worked. Yeah. All right. What does that look like? So, marketing says, we want a link to Google in the breadcrumbs. Well, you guys know how to do a lot of this already, so let's see what this looks like. Well, we know for sure that will need to be in our module configuration. All right, so we have to first find out where this is being rendered. Okay, so home, apparel, ink eater, growlin, bomb, bear, destroyed tea. Okay. Well, how would we find out where this block, what's involved in this block?
Turn on template hints.
Template path hints, yes, just like you're directed in the slide. So, configuration, switch it to website scope, under developer,
What is on that picture?
it's like some abstract little bear head. Yeah. Yeah, well, I know. I mean, that was back when this place was really a startup. Pretty early on, that sample data. So I would honestly, I would guess that maybe somebody around here had some sort of street artist friend. You know, maybe just bake that in. That would be my best guess. I don't know if that's true or not, but I like the story, so I keep telling it. Yeah, see, it's totally a bear. See, there's eyes and a nose and the faint suggestion of a bearish type cartoon face. Looks like a Calvin and Hobbes kind of bear. She looks a little bit like Hobbes. All right, so, ta-da. We have our template here. Default template page HTML breadcrumbs.phTML. We can actually, of course, just put the put the link in there. But no, we want to do this in page block HTML breadcrumbs. So that would be page HTML underscore breadcrumbs. Right? Okay, so that's going to be our configuration. So page, oh, yep, rewrite,
HTML underscore breadcrumbs.
exactly, HTML underscore breadcrumbs. And I'm going to follow my similar pattern of trying to preserve a similar path. Day 2 block, HTML breadcrumbs will be my class. So then I can go to my file system. I've got block, so now I just need a new folder, HTML, and new file, breadcrumbs. Oops. Sorry, I have a typo.
HTML.
So I'll need to correct that everywhere. Okay. All right. Well, okay, so our assignment is to add a hard-coded breadcrumb to the beginning. So we need to figure out how those breadcrumbs are added in the first place. So we'll look at the original class. All right, so the original class has a construct method, traditional PHP constructs. Oh, look, and it's setting its own template. All right. Ooh, add crumb. That sounds promising. Oh, and they've got this handy little comment here. So it looks like we need to somehow feed a function in here, an array with this format. Label, title, link, first, last. Okay. So, well, what would we do? So we want ours to be first in the array, right? What can we do there? Well, I haven't told you about this one handy little function. called a protected function underscore construct. This is not the typical PHP construct. This is one that Magento created for us because Magento doesn't want us playing around with the PHP construct method. Of course, you see in this class, this was back in the old days, and they kind of violate their own rules. In fact, okay, so actually I'd be curious to know. C, internal constructor that is called from the real constructor. I love this. Please override this one instead of overriding real constructor. They even ask you nicely in the code to do this. And that's from Mage Core Block Abstract. They're so sweet sometimes. So, we could probably do this, add link, right? Or add crumb, thank you, add crumb. And then let's take a look at what we need to pass in. Okay, what other? So crumb name, crumb info. All right, crumb info, crumb. So crumb name probably just needs to be some string here. Let's see. So we'll say Google link. And then we'll pass in an array. I think we only need to satisfy a couple of these parameters here. Label, title, and link. And I'll show you why this looks like this in a second. Okay, so label, we'll say Google title. Go to the Google. And the link, of course, would be google.com. So when this block is initialized, we're going to call this block's add crumb method and just add our crumb right away. And I'll just intuitively know that that's going to be good enough. All right, now we just need to check that it worked. Google, go to the Google. Yeah, Google. Not endorsing Google. Bing is also fine. Not official Magento endorsements. And you can see here, we are using our block class, obviously. So There's that code again. Is this working for everybody?